last week, Australia's top spy, well, he announced his organisation would drop any reference to Islamic extremism because he says the term is upsetting Muslim groups and is no longer fit for purpose. Handing down the annual threat assessment, ASIO boss Mike Burgess revealed the term would be ditched in favour of religiously motivated violent extremism. That's a bit of a mouthful. To discuss this, as I said, I'm joined now by the wordsmith in residence here on Credlin, author and broadcaster Kel Richards. I tell you what, Kel, I don't know how you fight an enemy you're not willing to name. Help me out with this one.
OK, linguistically it's just wrong. It's wrong in two ways. The first is religiously motivated violent extremism. Religion is a huge paddock, right? So there's not just Muslims there, there's also all the Buddhists and the Hindus and the Shinto and the Confucianists and all the Christians. There are no Methodist terrorism gangs. There's no terrorism plot being plotted by Presbyterians. And as for the Church of England, they're probably still having a committee meeting somewhere. They'd never get around to it. And there's no Shinto terrorism, there's no Confucian terrorism. It all comes from one quarter. So try to broaden the label and say, well, just vaguely call it religious is just factually wrong. It's Islamism that is the problem. And they said so. In fact, Mike Burgess said so. Not long before this annual report, when he was talking to a Senate committee, he actually told them that the principal source of threat is still Sunni extremist terrorism. So he acknowledges that's the reality, but he won't use the expression. The other thing that's wrong with this is he's saying there are Muslim groups who come to us and say, look, those people who are terrorists don't represent us, which is fair enough. And we're unhappy about that. It's disparaging for us. But the terrorists self-identify. They say they are Islamic terrorists, or they say they're Islamic jihadists. That's the word they would use. They call out as they drive their truck onto a footpath full of people, they call out Allahu Akbar. They self-identify. Now, in the world of woke, which surrounds us today, self-identification is all that matters. If someone with XY chromosomes identifies as a woman, he is a woman. If Bruce Pascoe identifies as an Aborigine, he is an Aborigine. Now, under the self-identification rule, which the woke have brought in, these terrorists self-identify as being Islamic terrorists. So this is a war of words that ASIO is very silly to get stuck into.
Yeah, and you're right. It's interesting, some of the Catholicism comments, we've seen plenty of those in recent years. Many have been deserved, I might add, with priests and others, the abuse of children, but they have not been dropped, but Islam's been dropped. What about this assault on pronouns in the UK? Because one of the pressures, I was talking to people on the weekend, one of the pressures that is happening in corporate Australia is in your signature block on your email is to say that, X and Y are my pronouns. My pronouns are she and he, and you might identify as something else. But that's also out there too, isn't it?
It is, and in Bournemouth City Council in the south of England, on the Channel, there's a councillor, what's her name, L.J. Evans, and she wants to officially have the council drop he and she pronouns and refer to everyone as they. Now she's saying it because she says it's unrealistic and it's offensive to some people and all the sort of things you normally hear, which I think is rubbish. But what it's going to lead to is lack of clarity and confusion. So you get a report from the general manager of Bournemouth Council and they have to thank them for their report. And then they have to talk about what they said, one person, they said in that report. I mean, this is just, what it does is it takes clarity out of English. For more than 1,200 years, right through the history of English, Old English, Middle English, Modern English, we've had gendered pronouns. It is normal, it's worked, and it hasn't offended anyone, hasn't hurt anyone. Suddenly, these ideas are invented and clarity is what will end up dying. I mean, how can you talk intelligently about a report written by a man and keep calling him they, or a report written by a woman and keep calling her they? You'll just end up with confusion. And no, of course you can't. Clarity will die in the same ditch. It's just common sense.